Heather McDonald on The Spectator with Freddie Gray.
Not getting hired or promoted. It's not because they're Jewish. It's because they're white and they're male and they don't fit into the intersectional categories.
What she was talking about right there was following up on her comment that this anti-Semitic stuff in the Trump administration is pretextual. This is Freddie Gray over at The Spectator. You're going to love Heather McDonald and her transformation. As the great Franklin in a message with me noted, over the years, she has been a rank abstractionist. That's the circle she's in. I've always been impressed by her intelligence. She's actually, and what we do here, we don't kiss up to women. And I know a lot of women don't like that. I know real women really like manly men that are not going to kiss their asses. They might tell guys, "Or we want you to be an ass kisser." They don't want that at all. That doesn't get the biology working, let me tell you. Often, they learn best horizontal, as I am reputed to have said a time or two. But when a woman is worthy of celebrating, actually worthy of celebrating, lauding, championing, we do it. And right now, there was the past couple of weeks, there was a woman who was celebrated and her name was everywhere. Where is Heather McDonald? Her name should be 50,000, 100,000 times more spoken and in the mouths and in the fingertips of our people after this interview. But it shows you the sickness of the white race, especially the schmucks. The sickness. Not a word for this. Not a word for something that is literally elephantine in its proportions. They can't see, they can't hear the victories. They can't see the victories. They are so poisoned. Their eyes, they have their blinders on. They have oil in their eyes. All the colors are reversed. They don't know victory from failure, from defeat, from triumph. They don't know. They can't discern. Their discernment is lost because of anti-whiteism. So they see a woman and they want to celebrate a woman several weeks back, and her name goes everywhere. Not a word for the atomic level victory of Heather McDonald. That's going to tell you everything you need to know about the content creators that you listen to out there. That's going to tell you everything you need to know about them. What do they celebrate? What matters or what's irrelevant? What's changing the world or what is perpetuating the current victimization of the white race? All I can do, and all of the heroes who accrete to this endeavor, to this movement, to this white well-being, to this white positivity, all we can do is be right again and again and again and again, and have more demonstrations of it than we can count. If you're too dumb to get it, if you are too immoral to follow the morality of success, then I can't think for you. Get lost.
Welcome back to the Americano Show. Today we are going to be talking about Black Lives Matter, the second in our series about Black Lives Matter, because we are approaching the 5th anniversary of that summer, that extraordinary summer of 2020, when the world seemed to be going madder than ever. And I'm delighted to be joined to discuss.
Thank God he didn't say summer of love. Everybody who says summer of love needs a metaphorical ass whooping.
This subject by Heather McDonald, who is a fellow.
Could you imagine the Israelis, a much healthier people than the white race, calling what happened on October 7th the 7th of love? Do you remember the 7th of love? Jesus. White race.
At the Manhattan Institute and the author of When Race Trumps Merit. Heather, you're joining us from California. Thank you for coming on. 5 years on from Black Lives Matter, how do you look back at that summer?
It was a summer of absolute anarchy and the near collapse of civilization, whose effects continue to be felt today every time an American goes to a drugstore and finds that the toothpaste is locked up and the criminals who are at risk of stealing it or not. We have ratcheted down our expectations for civilized behavior. We live on the edge of yet more mass looting events, mass anarchy events. Just this last Saturday in Los Angeles, there was a rampaging crowd that covered police cars with graffiti right next to them, broke windows, covered every retail establishment around with graffiti, subway
Look at
cars,
this.
out of just sheer destructive venom.
Anti-whiteism. Those are our subway cars. Those are our signs. Those are our cities. That's the civility that provides us the harmony we need to live our lives. They are robbing from us. Every single one of us, especially our children. They are robbing from us the harmony that we would feel in our lives. We don't get to live again. We don't get another shot at living our lives harmoniously.
So the perpetrators of the violence of that summer that we've put out of our mind, it's kind of like a response to the COVID insanity. We've just decided, let's not look back at that. The perpetrators were barely punished. We hear constantly about the January 6th Capitol rioters and their punishments, and anybody that was engaged in violence and attacks on officers on January 6th, of course, should be punished to the full extent of the law. But the people who spent days ransacking businesses, stealing from pharmacies, that have resulted in permanent closures and decimation of business districts in Minneapolis and elsewhere, we never hear about them. And the message was sent that this type of behavior will be justified in the name of, and I put this in about 3 levels of scare quotes, racial justice.
If that summer of 2020 was the sort of peak of near anarchy in the US, it's often said or thought today that the Trump administration is a kind of corrective to that. But from your description of America today, you don't think the correction has really happened yet?
Well, it's a question, what happens to a civilization when there's that degree of anarchy with no consequences? And we've had outbreaks since then of similar.
And why aren't there consequences? Because the actions are taking place in the name of anti-whiteism. That's why there aren't consequences, because anti-whites are in too many nodes of power, which we discovered during those anti-white terror attacks. They are in too many nodes of power. The acts were in the name of anti-whiteism. They won't be punished. If you and I went out there and did not even a thousandth of that in the name of defending the white race in the streets, everyone would be punished, not according to the letter of the law, but beyond.
Similar contempt for the law, whether it's the celebration of the cold-blooded assassination of a healthcare executive by Luigi Mangione, who became a folk hero, whether it's the attack.
I told you all that was anti-whiteism.
The terroristic attack on 2 workers for the Israeli embassy several weekends ago.
Anti-whiteism.
These and the attacks on Tesla dealerships, Tesla cars. The idea that you get to engage in violence for causes that you believe in, I think, has been normalized to a certain extent. Now, what the significance
Now, there was the abstractionizing coming out there, the conservative, where she just spoke generally about a cause you believe in. And she knows very well. She's coming to the force of the House of Swash, pushing the healing concepts, the white magic into the world. And she is bright and clearly brave. So I suspect and hope we're going to see more out of Heather McDonald.
Of the Trump election is up for grabs, and everybody wants to read into any event his own favorite causes. So of course, yes, I have somebody who has opposed racial victimology, who opposes disparate impact analysis, who completely disagrees with the analysis that America is today systemically racist.
And I would like to point out to people like Carl Benjamin and so many others of these online cucks that you're not going to be able to re-intellectualize and abstractionize and argue in a more erudite way, in a more urbane way than people like Heather MacDonald have done over the years. You're not going to be able to do that and get some sort of a better result. It's been done. And here's where we are today.
Would like to believe that the reason Trump was elected was because Americans have finally said enough with the race grift. We're not going to, the heterosexual white male is no longer going to accept being demonized on zero grounds. But I'm not sure. It may be that Trump was elected because the economy was bad or because he promised to close the borders. That having been said, he certainly has been very.
She is right. My God.
Grounds. But I'm not sure. It may be that Trump was elected because the economy was bad or because he promised to close the borders. That having been said, he certainly has been very busy in rolling out executive orders that do take head on the lies that the Black Lives Matter movement embodied, above all with regards to white Americans' inherited collective guilt and their ongoing alleged activities of white supremacy.
Well, a lot of those ideas, neo-Marxist ideas, they're often called, come from academia and university.
So this is the same abstractionizing, the neo-Marxist idea. But which neo-Marxism are you talking about? Totally useless. Been done. Everything's going down the toilet because of it.
And some of Trump's executive orders and some of his actions since he's been back in the White House have been to directly take on that sort of thinking in American universities, most notably Harvard. Do you think he's had any success there? Do you think those executive orders will bear fruit?
Oh, boy, is that a tough question. He's had success to the extent that there are a considerable number of universities who have actually disbanded their diversity bureaucracies. Of course, many of them have merely rebranded them. You have the same diversity.
I don't, there's a lot of Robbie Starbucks out there and worship, but like, oh, we defeated it. The conservatives won the culture war. Talk about counterfeiting victory. We'll be talking about that a little later. So don't go anywhere if you'd like to learn about that after we do our celebrating of our swashbucklers. But there you have it. A great example of somebody willing to speak the truth. Well, they just rebranded these things. And then we heard from Yiz the Unifier just the other day, looking at the investors, and there was only at most of any of these major international companies, at the highest 2% of the investors wanting anything anti-white. So it's not there.
Democrat that was in 2023 promoting books like Against Assimilation, Why You Should Not Try to Act Like White People, and now he's still there at Case Western Reserve University as a belonging officer. So there's a lot of fast business going on, but there are some schools that seem to have truly made some difference in their, at least in their bureaucracy. But he's also created quite a backlash because his means have been arguably beyond the legal authority that he has. He has not followed some arcane statutory and regulatory procedures for defunding universities, for punishing them under our civil rights laws, for discriminating against whites and Asians and Jews. And so he's managed, frankly, in many not just conservative circles or not just left-wing circles.
So what was I saying a moment ago about if Trump wants to have a lasting impact? She's pointing out that he has abridged. He's might have even broken laws. They're all going to just take this all back. If he wants to make a lasting impact, he's got to legitimize the concepts that put our people in another story that the media is not going to give voice to
make Harvard look like a virtuous David standing up against the thuggish Goliath, just because Trump's crusade against it is so arguably over the top. And I agree with Trump's analysis of universities 100%. I and others, it's not just me, have been sounding the alarm for 40 years about the fact that these institutions have totally betrayed their primary responsibility, which is to pass on a cultural inheritance with love and gratitude, and to educate students to the point that they can realize how unbelievably fortunate they are to be the recipients of so much beauty, so much sublimity, and so much brilliant conquest of natural mysteries and oppression by poverty, by disease. But that having been said, I wish Trump were proceeding with a bit more caution. And I also think, to be perfectly honest, that he is using the anti-Semitism charge very pretextually. It is a stand-in for something that is much deeper, and a lot of his measures have nothing to do with anti-Semitism, yet that is the banner under which most of this is flying, and I think that's a mistake.
That's very interesting what you say about.
Thinks that's a mistake. What are the much deeper? What are the much deeper? Oh my God. Everyone who claims to care about white people should be felicitous at this moment.
Using anti-Semitism pretextually. Is that because in the world that we live in, one has to assume the language of an oppressed minority in order to get anything done? One has to talk in terms of oppression in order to combat the type of thinking that exists across American universities?
Well, I think it's yes, but I would say I might substitute a different set of victims, and I'm always reluctant to do anything. The left is always going to accuse you of, well, you're playing the victim card if you point out just some factual aspects of our world, like if you're a straight white male trying to get into a selective college, you are completely penalized. That's just fact. That's not playing the victim. The reality in our world today is black privilege, not white privilege. There's not a single mainstream institution, whether in academia or in the business world, that is not tying it.
Appreciate the reality that there are millions of white people who are normal white folk out there, do a wide range of jobs, that will heed what Heather McDonald and those like her will articulate. Appreciate that, please. Appreciate that.
Itself into knots to try and hire and promote as many remotely qualified blacks as it can. But white males have a very hard time getting into medical school, into law schools today. So I would actually say that there is a denigration within universities of a culture and of certain individuals, but it's much broader than
a culture, certain individuals,
of a culture and of certain individuals, but it's much broader than anti-Semitism.
Why now? Why now in these urbane circles where the legitimized intellectuals, the people who are paid big money, the people who are read by those in power, why now? She said 40 years she's been talking about how America is being ruined. What has changed? What has changed? This community. This community has changed. If we did not put these concepts out there, if we're not pushing this day in, day out and celebrating it, the conversation would still be about which type of Marxist is it? And did this originate out of the 15th or the 16th century?
It's as you know very well, Freddie, because you've been articulating this, it's a hatred for the entirety of Western civilization. The primary attitude of academia today is what the philosopher Paul Ricoeur called the hermeneutics of suspicion. Anything it takes up from the West will be done.
What does she mean by Western civilization? What does she mean?
Done in order to deconstruct it, to show that it's a power play. And so that's the key fact of universities today. The idea that their primary characteristic is anti-Semitism, I just think that's a bit facile. Yes, there are totally ignorant students that are involved in this group mania of conformity to feel like they are united against a enemy which is Israeli Zionism, and that they are defending this underdog, which is the Palestinians. These students know nothing about the history. It is completely an ignorant reaction. But that, I think, that is going on. There are professors who encourage it. There is certainly a circumambient ideology against so-called, colonialism. We are in a post-colonial world.
The circumambient ideology. Wonder what it is. That just means enveloping. There's an enveloping ideology. So she is either already thinking what we talked about here, that anti-whiteism is changing because the complexion of the anti-white population is becoming darker. And so they're viewing more and more Jews as white, especially vis-a-vis the Israeli-Palestinian issue. So she's saying this circumambulatory ideology is informing that view, kind of like we talked about that here. But get ready.
But let's be honest, Jews per se, in hiring, they're not discriminated against the way they were 70 years ago. It's not that they're not being promoted because they're not seen as clubbable in the WASP Country Club in Greenwich, Connecticut. If they're not getting hired or promoted, it's not because they're Jewish. It's because they're white and they're male and they don't fit into the intersectional categories. So, I don't believe that Alan Garber, the acting president of Harvard, is anti-Semitic and he is Jewish, but
so she just pointed out what I pointed out. Do you remember we looked at that story written by that Jewish woman about how the Jewish males were being actors and in other parts of Hollywood were occasionally not getting hired anymore? We pointed out here, it's because they're perceived as white males, not because they're Jewish. The anti-whiteism is now, they're suffering it as collateral damage. Remember that last year?
Or his bureaucrats are. Now, some people in the diversity bureaucracies, those intersectional individuals, there's probably quite a few who are more conventionally anti-Semitic, and that correlates with being Black. Let's face it, there has been historically anti-Semitism in the Black community, and you see that now in the anti-Israel movement. But generally, I think that what ails the universities is not anti-Semitism; it's anti-Westernism. It's a complete just violation of their entire reason for being.
Okay, now you're literally seeing in this interview the walk. And why is the walk happening? House of Swash. You're literally seeing this interview just happened the other day. You're literally seeing in real time the walk. Now, Heather McDonald, she's been out there in the vanguard talking about the attack on the West. If you've read anything that she said for many years, she's been very brave. But there wasn't this community to give her and Freddie Gray the new enveloping, the new circumambulatory ideology of white positivity. The concept anti-whiteism. Oh my God.
To what extent does that anti-Westernism overlap with anti-whiteism?
Look at this.
Violation of
Watch
their
him
entire
use
reason
this.
for being.
To what extent does that anti-Westernism overlap with anti-whiteism?
The little nervous laugh there. This new thing that's being talked about. Wonder where it's coming from. Wonder where it's coming from. Man, my phone should be blowing up, baby. My phone should be blowing up. Oh my God.
Violation of their
But listen to
entire
her
reason for
response.
being.
To what extent does that anti-Westernism overlap with anti-whiteism? Because I mean, if a government were to try and take up, the sort of the whites of rights, it would quickly be accused of being white supremacist and so on. So
notice also, as I did, that when he said, to what extent is the anti-Western overlapping with anti-whiteism? She didn't flinch. There was no sign on her face that she had a problem with that. So many of these others that are put in front of our face all the time, Rufo and so many others, they hate that. They hate that. This woman is a legit leader. She is a legit leader, like the woman I was talking about 25 years ago from Southern California. And got big salutes for Freddie Gray to say anti-whiteism. My God, brother. He's sitting on a pear over there.
It would quickly be accused of being white supremacist and so on. So to what extent can Americans really talk about the hatred of white people in a fair-minded way?
It's absolutely tantamount. They are the same thing. Anti-Westernism and anti-whiteism are identical. And yes, it is very interesting to see what's happening in the Trump administration. One of his main aides is Stephen Miller.
I got to hear it again.
Tantamount. They are
the hatred of white people in a fair-minded way.
It's absolutely tantamount. They are the same thing. Anti-Westernism and anti-whiteism are identical. And yes, it is very interesting to see what's happening in the Trump administration. One of his main aides is Stephen Miller, who was involved in the first Trump administration. He started out working for Jeff Sessions, who was our strongest immigration hawk in the Senate. Sessions was Trump's first attorney general and his first.
Remember, this is not just like some woman. This is a woman who has been circling through and around and interviewed and lectures, all of these prestigious, reasonable, responsible, academic, highbrow thinking circles just said that. This isn't like somebody at the water cooler. This isn't just some other person. Everybody who cares about the white race should be, this is atomic level.
Administration, and then Trump, in one of his typical adolescent tantrum fits, fired him. Sessions put in many of the pro-border policies that are now being reinstated in the second Trump administration, and he also put a real limitation on police consent decrees, which again has also been recently done by the current head of civil rights in the Justice Department, Harmeet Dillon. Stephen Miller was a border hawk during Trump 1. Then in the interim period, he founded a private law firm, a nonprofit law firm that did litigate on behalf of and try to tear down anti-white policies in government and in private sector. And now he's back in the administration, and you have Trump with his recent executive order, I think it was, or maybe it came out of the State Department, I don't know, saying that, well, we're going to grant Boers, Afrikaners in South Africa, asylum status because they're living through something close to a genocide in South Africa with the overt war on their land holding and murders. And this has created just an absolute level of hysteria in the American media. He's playing white politics. How dare he say that whites could ever be the victims of discrimination? This was foreseen. This moment was foreseen years ago by the race hustlers in academia, who came out with this formula saying that there can never be, by definition, there can never be discrimination against whites, because discrimination is a combination of power and privilege. And because whites have power and privilege, they can never be discriminated against. It's only blacks who can ever be discriminated against. And so that would, come into play again here with the left saying that by definition, no white can ever be the victim of discrimination. So Trump is coming very close and may have in passing at various moments to saying, yes, in fact, it's white people who are the targets of discrimination today. And I would like to see that go further, frankly. You know, as a matter of pure logic, if every other, and I
Did
would,
you hear
it's white
that?
people who are the targets of discrimination today. And
You have to appreciate, this is like the crowning cap of the pyramid, circles of the intelligentsia for the white race in Western civilization. That's what she circles through. That's what her caliber of education is. Those are the kind of people that she speaks to. You have to appreciate this. You really, and I am in like another, I have been in, since I saw this, another orbit. So many years. So many years. You have no idea how many times I had people tell me, no idea how many times I had people tell me, both cucks and schmucks, that the concept anti-whiteism was ridiculous. Nobody would ever say it. You know how many times that Mark, that clown, told me no one would ever say it? That it was sounded ridiculous? You know how many times? He said you might be able to get people to say anti-white, but you'll never get them to say anti-whiteism. It's a joke. It sounds ridiculous. And so many in that audience said the exact same thing. For decades, I've been fighting uphill against that with few friends. And I think they're all here right now, almost, with the exception of a handful of few. And now look, from the pinnacle.
And I would like to see that go further, frankly. You know, as a matter of pure logic, if every other group gets identity politics, it as a matter of pure completeness in your conceptual scheme, why shouldn't white people? You know, either we none of us have this, and let's just get rid of the whole stinking schema whatsoever, or let's make it universal, and every group gets to claim some kind of identity solidarity, and be able to say that our culture had something to offer, which is clearly the case. You know, Western civilization happened to be demographically white. It came out of Europe. That's just the facts, folks. You can't change that historically. Yet no civilization has done as much for world humanity as the West. That too is just objectively true. When you look at the...
And she just said the West was white people. You got to love this woman. You got to love this woman. All these naysayers. And now, you know, to tie it back into our lesson of the day, counterfeiting victory, you watch as content creators out there who are Jew-spurgs and schmucks, anti-non-whites of various types, you watch as abstractionists from cuck circles all now try to claim that their conversations moved the Overton window enough that Heather McDonald could say the exact same words that Jason and the House of Swash are pushing. I am in nirvana. Holy
pace of scientific and technological development that began in Britain, in the Royal Society in London in the 17th century, and then just picked up steam and went gangbusters in Britain in the 18th and 19th century with the Industrial Revolution and the conquest of biological ignorance. It's stunning. Everything we look at in our world today is a product of Western innovation, and our political theories are also a product of Western civilization. And I mean the theories that the left fights in the name of equality and tolerance, those are uniquely Western ideas. And yet we're only allowed to say that we're the source of oppression. And again, like you've got some great thinkers there, Nigel Bigger, who has exploded that myth, and we should know that every other civilization has been as imperialistic, as ruthless, as cruel, as slavery perpetrating as the West, but they all get a free pass.
Well, I suppose another thing that Western civilization has created is this self-criticism that sometimes...
Biospirit of the West saying his mouth fell open when he listened to this interview. It's awesome. I don't think... Let's see, where are we at? No. Near the end of the interview, as you can see, we're rolling up at the top of the hour when we celebrate the work that we do with these concepts that have made this happen. Here's the thing. These are the marching orders. We have to support Heather. when she uses these concepts. We have to make her feel emboldened. We have to make her feel like the champion that she is, the hero of Western civilization that she is. She stands leagues higher than so many of these boys in the bodies of adult males who can't say the truth, who now will slowly gin up some courage because this wonderful woman has had the courage to stand up and say it like it is, to say the truth. We need to be that bolstering energy for her. Her name should be on our lips. Everyone should come to know who she is. When she talks about, when she talks about the Western civilization being the white race, and therefore anti-Western being anti-whiteism, they are the exact same thing, she said. They are the exact same thing. We need to be the chorus there so that she has an army of heroes saying exactly, you are exactly right. That's what we need to be. Biospirit of the West getting it immediately when he saw this. Mouth fell open. He said, I am glowing. This has been my life's work. This has been my life's work to legitimize these concepts, to get them into the mouths of our people. And here we are, victory after victory after victory. If you have the ears, if you have the understanding, you know how powerful this is. So, folks, when you hear these other content creators saying they've moved some Overton window within the anti-white narrative, and that's why this is, they are counterfeiting victory. They are liars. When they say that they have somehow these people who are either cucks or schmucks. Now, we do have concentric circles around this community that to various degrees are white positive as well. And they have also been putting their shoulder into it. Maybe not necessarily swashing exactly like we swash, but talking about the victimization of our people in a white positive way. With a white positive, folks, with a focus on us, a righteous focus on us in love and wanting to end our victimization because of love, because we love our people and we don't want to be victimized anymore. And they too have contributed to this change in the atmosphere of the polity across Western civilization. But nothing can be taken away from you all, my friends. These are the actual words that I was mocked, that I was ridiculed for, that I was kept from speaking roles for over the years. Again and again and again and again. I get to somebody you really respect. Somebody you really respect has kept me out because of my strange words. Because of these strange words, has worked behind the scenes to keep me out because of my strange words. How strange are they now? Why isn't my phone ringing? Kiss my white ass. Oh, shit. Damn, folks. This is a victory beyond victories. Pat yourselves on the back. Gird yourself for the struggles to come, ladies and gentlemen. And when we come back in just a moment, we're going to be celebrating some of that activism right here.